Key point 1. Women's issues have no geographical boundaries. We've gotten used to hearing the term women's rights issues quite often. It has been one of the central conversations in the Western world since the late 19th century. Since then, we've achieved quite a lot. Thanks to the different feminist movements, there have been substantial changes in the legislation, culture, traditions, and societal gender roles. But the fight is far from over. In fact, in some parts of the world, it hasn't even yet begun. While in wealthier countries, discrimination nowadays is mostly a matter of unequal pay and social expectations, it is life-threatening in much of the developing world. The statistics of such oppression and abuse are numbing. More women died because of gender-based violence in the last 50 years than men in all the wars of the 20th century. This fact, without exaggeration, points to a gender genocide. Gender-based violence in the world includes sex trafficking, forced prostitution, rape, and maternal mortality. The following chapters will discuss these issues, including their causes and possible solutions. The global scale of gender oppression and the gravity of crimes against women around the globe suggest that this isn't merely a women's rights issue, but a human rights one. Unfortunately, of all the U.S. foreign aids, less than 1% is targeted to women's issues. The same is true for many other Western countries. But this has to change if we want to win the struggle for gender equality in the developing world. Investment in girls' education may well be the highest return investment available in the developing world. Lawrence Summers. Investing in women and giving them the tools necessary to become functional members of society and succeed is the most productive thing we can do. According to the United Nations Development Program, empowering women directly correlates with many other societal issues. For example, it helps improve economic productivity, health, and nutrition, reduce infant mortality, and provide a better foundation for the next generation. Remember, including women in the economy on different levels to boost the gross national product is the double X solution, in a nod to chromosomes. Though plenty of research proves that gender equality is a crucial tool in achieving economic success and battling other societal issues, the usefulness of women shouldn't be a factor when talking about fundamental human rights. The change is already taking place, but it can be accelerated and strengthened if we join our forces and inspire each other. Key point 2. Modern-day slavery is as dangerous as the 18th century one. Even though slavery was abolished almost 2 centuries ago, it is still very much a thing in many parts of the world. It has transformed and disguised itself by many different names, but at its very core, it remains what it was, a violation of human rights and a crime against humanity. Brothels and red light districts are nothing more than an example of a slavery makeover. Most prostitutes and sex workers are forced into such establishments against their will, if not by force, then by circumstance or lack of means for survival. Enslaved women also tend to accept their fate with time, settling for willingly selling sex. This acceptance happens due to the lack of other options and stigma that thrive in society, preventing them from getting other jobs. Remember, consent can be meaningful only if it is a fully informed conscious decision, and if a person has reasonable alternatives and an option to change their mind later. Forced prostitution is especially thriving in Pakistan, China, India, and Iran, the most sexually conservative and reserved countries. Sex trafficking is a major issue in these societies. It leads to the enslavement of young women, dooming them to a short lifetime of humiliation, abuse, restriction, and illness. According to a British medical journal, The Lancet, about 1 million children are forced into prostitution yearly. Many anti-trafficking campaigners consider this a vast understatement, though the precise number is difficult to calculate. If this is the scale of the problem, why is the issue of sex trafficking constantly benched as a secondary one? We all have to move it up in our to-do lists to achieve meaningful change. Whatever the exact number is, it seems almost certain that the modern global slave trade is larger in absolute terms than the Atlantic slave trade in the 18th and 19th centuries was. Ethan B. Kapstein. Key point 3. A multitude of strategies is a way to succeed. We must highlight 3 significant factors when discussing the worsening of sex slavery issues in the last few decades. Firstly, with the collapse of communism, many countries plunged into economic distress. The crime rates rose and communities weakened. Then, as capitalism slowly filled the breach, it created new markets not just for produce and goods, but also for female bodies. The second cause is world globalization. Traveling to remote cities and countries has never been easier and cheaper than now. Sadly, this simplifies the process of abducting and relocating young girls to brothels abroad or just far enough that no one could find them. The third reason that escalated the problem is the spread of AIDS on the sex market. For fear of catching HIV, customers tend to choose the youngest girls, thinking they are less likely to have the virus. This logic further perpetuates the cycle of sex trafficking. Western experience demonstrates that it's challenging to find an approach to tackling this issue. Many have already backfired. There are two methods of reducing the number of brothels and trafficked victims: prohibition and legalization. Keep in mind, we can use various tools to stop sex trafficking, but they are nothing without the necessary political and social will. Many believe the way to tackle the issues in question is to legalize prostitution. They base this belief on the negative experience that the U.S. had with the prohibition of alcohol in the 1920s. But, though the legalize and regulate approach could work well in some societies, it is much less effective in countries where prostitution is mostly forced. Parallel illegal brothels that don't stick to the rules and use coercion and underage girls will always accompany the legal ones. Additionally, the governments of the developing countries often fail to enforce the established laws. In countries with large-scale trafficking, prohibition yields more favorable results. Constant raids on brothels and regular inspections won't eliminate prostitution, but they will help reduce the profitability of such businesses, shortening the numbers of trafficked women. Many positive cases show that we can and will make meaningful progress if there's political will. We are already putting the issues on the world's agenda by asking questions and expressing interest. Did you know, in the first 5 years after the criminalization of sexual services, the number of prostitutes in Sweden decreased by 41%. Key point 4. Violence is often embedded in the culture. In many cases, violence against women is a mundane part of everyday life. For many, it is an accepted social norm, which is why it's a complicated issue to tackle. Even women perpetuate violent, misogynistic tendencies through internal oppression, accepting them as part of reality. Statistics show that women between the ages of 15 and 44 are more likely to be injured or die from male violence than malaria, cancer, wars, and traffic accidents combined. One of the most horrific types of violence against women is rape. Though widespread, it remains stigmatized in our society, making it harder for the victims to step up and report it. A study by World Health Organization shows that from 30% to 60% of women experienced sexual or physical violence from their partners in most countries. These numbers are highest in developing countries such as Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and many others. There, rape results from an entire culture of sexual violence, not just a problem of a few rapists. Don't forget, changing the law isn't enough. There must be a shift in the culture and the legal code to transform the reality. For example, it is normal for young men to kidnap and rape a girl they have laid their eyes on in the Ethiopian countryside. Doing so ensures that the girl's family will accept their marriage proposal later. There are no risks involved for young men doing this, since the girls' families rarely prosecute them for fear of further humiliation. Though reporting rape in the Ethiopian countryside is not a done thing, those who do are slowly but surely creating a ripple effect. Wainoshet Zabin's story is a tragic but inspiring example of this. She was kidnapped in the middle of the night by a group of unknown men from the village. She struggled, but no one heard her or came to her aid. For 2 days, Wainoshet Zabin was beaten and raped by her kidnappers. Eventually, she managed to escape. So far, a usual Ethiopian story. But her father, an educated man, was less inclined to let his daughter marry a rapist. So, father and daughter went to the police and reported rape as a crime. After many debates and one more kidnapping, the judge sentenced Zabin's rapist to 10 years in prison. Though insignificant on the larger scale of things, Wainoshet Zabin's story is a step in the right direction. It shows that justice and change are attainable if people have a support system and proper education. Key point 5. Maternal mortality is an issue for the whole human race. Indifference remains the cruelest form of violence against women. Women of the developing world suffer because of this no less than they do from sex trafficking or rape. The most widespread example is maternal health, which people rarely view as a priority or a problem worthy of attention. Yet the World Health Organization estimates that in 2005, over 500,000 women died during pregnancy or childbirth. The risk that comes with pregnancy is 1,000 times higher in the developing world than in the West. Therefore, we must put a serious effort into reducing maternal mortality. Otherwise, the world will keep on losing thousands of women to it. A way out is to reduce unwanted pregnancies and provide parental health care for women. Remember, maternal health is a human rights issue. Saving female lives is imperative, and it is long overdue. Why do so many women die in childbirth? 4 major factors contribute to the heart-wrenching statistics: biology, lack of education, lack of rural health systems, and disregard for women. Though poverty remains one of the reasons for high rates of maternal mortality, studies show that it isn't a central one. A country can successfully avoid the issue regardless of its GDP. Biological reasons have to do with anatomy. For example, many issues with childbirth relate to the type of women's pelvis. A narrow pelvis obstructs the process of birth. While this issue is easily managed in Western countries by C-sections and other medical treatments, such options aren't available for women in the developing world. Lack of education is another cause of high maternal mortality rates. Education motivates people to have smaller-sized families and promotes contraception and hospital use. Combined with family planning, it also makes families more capable of earning a living. The third reason is the lack of rural health systems. If women had easier access to health care, it would significantly reduce the number of fatal cases. Unfortunately, insufficient funds and the shortage of doctors in rural areas make it almost impossible to provide adequate health care in the countryside. The final reason for maternal mortality is the general disregard for women in many societies. The more women are oppressed and marginalized, the higher maternal mortality rates are. Societies and communities must realize that women matter. As soon as they do, the world will begin to change. Women are not dying because of untreatable diseases. They are dying because societies have yet to make the decision that their lives are worth saving. Mahmoud F. Fathallah. Key point 6. Education, a remedy to cure all ills. There are countless issues that women worldwide face every single day. Some are small, some are frightening, but we must address all of them to have a progressive society. Multiple studies have shown that investing in girls' education is the best way to fix most of these issues. Education can curb poverty rates while providing an impetus for women to stand up against injustice and shrug off docility. Moreover, by educating women, countries invest in people who will later contribute to the national economy. It's a win-win situation all around. Educated women tend to have fewer children and marry later. They can transform their own lives and those around them. Remember, education is a multi-purpose tool that creates knowledge, destroys harmful stereotypes, and breaks down societal barriers, thus helping us reach new opportunities. Investing in school construction and teacher training programs is essential to increase education levels. However, there are also smaller but more cost-effective ways of getting girls to remain in school, such as helping them manage menstruation or providing regular health checkups. There's also another approach: financial support programs for underprivileged families. The idea is to pay families to keep their kids in school and undergo regular medical examinations. The program was introduced in Mexico and yielded positive results after a trial period. After 3 years, school enrollment increased, children received regular medical attention, and their overall well-being improved. This program is a working solution that can help keep kids in school. Once they're in school, the administration can offer small scholarships for the students who do well so that their time at school is as effective and productive as possible. Conclusion. Empowering women is essential to overcoming poverty, inequality, and other social issues. But it is important to acknowledge that this is a challenging field of work that we must tackle with thoughtfulness and tact. We should work on legislation, culture, traditions, religion, and social relations changes to turn the situation around. Women's issues are humanitarian concerns that rise above gender and race. We cannot keep failing half of humanity. Helping struggling women is far from inexpensive, but Western nations have to put values above interests to implement sustainable change. Many issues are confronting us in the 21st century: war, terrorism, overpopulation, environmental crisis, and poverty. For all of them, empowering, educating, and liberating women is part of the answer. Therefore, the movement for women's rights has to be flexible, creative, and inclusive, offering a variety of strategies. The more people this movement reaches, the quicker we find an effective solution. Aiding in the fight for women's rights can take different forms and shapes. Each of us can become a catalyst of change by spreading awareness, donating, or even empowering the women in our lives. Though the goal is to help others, in doing so, we are also helping ourselves. Supporting others is a sure way to self-improvement. The transformation in the developing world is inevitable. The main question is how long it will take and how many women are yet to suffer before it is over. Considering all this, remaining a bystander of change is no longer an option. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. Mahatma Gandhi. Try this. To make an immediate change, you can sponsor a woman in need through Plan International, Women for Women International, or other similar programs. Look up local groups that specialize in aiding women in developing countries and find out how you can join their work.